This man is shirtless, facing away. His back is covered in scars. They look like thick vines wrapped around his body. A photographer captured a masterpiece called The Scourged Back, and it leaves people speechless. This isn't just hard evidence, exposing the brutal slave system. More importantly, it spread like a wind that gave enslaved people strength to rise up against that savage oppression. Peter is one of those enslaved black men. That day, he and his wife and kids were enjoying a quiet life when a gang of slave catchers suddenly stormed the house. No explanation, just grabbed Peter and dragged him away. The slave owner watched proudly as his prey struggled. To control someone who's desperate, you go straight for their weakness. With Peter, that meant threatening his family. When he saw a gun aimed at his little girl, Peter had no choice but to let them tie him up. Sometimes, between life and survival, there's only one door separating them. People outside can't help you, and the people inside can only stop fighting. Peter was drowning in despair, but he still told his family to stay strong and keep living. On the way, he witnessed misery everywhere. Countless black men were forced to work under the slave owner's watch. Anyone who didn't obey was whipped mercilessly, sometimes to death, just to scare everyone else. They even put the dead on poles. And the air reeked of blood and hopelessness. Black lives were treated like dirt. Seeing all this, Peter realized soon enough he'd end up the same way. When the iron collar locked onto his neck, freedom and hope were no longer his. He was forced to obey like a hunting dog. Those cold-blooded hunters didn't see slaves as human. Their hands never stopped swinging the whip until backs burned with pain. Some couldn't take it and tried to run. They were caught and dragged back. And for the runaways they recaptured, those beasts pressed red-hot iron into their skin, branding runaway on their faces as a warning. In a slave's world, there was no light, because they lived in fear of whips and beatings. By day, they worked like mad, and at night they were chained up like animals, locked inside a rough pen, thrown together from scraps of wood. Peter was a man of faith. Even in this kind of hell, he didn't abandon what he believed in. He started praying. Other slaves couldn't stand seeing that. They said, if God is real, then bring freedom to this loyal sheep, right now. But God didn't do that. Or maybe they said God doesn't exist at all. Maybe the heavens really did hear a sincere prayer from a suffering man that day at work. Peter overheard some news from someone nearby. The U.S. President, Lincoln, had announced emancipation. With Lincoln leading the way, enslaved people everywhere were rising together. Believing the slave owners' days were numbered, Peter couldn't hide his joy. He even dared to raise a shovel against the hunters. That slave catcher, Fassel, was thrilled by the challenge. His biggest hobby was breaking a man from the inside out. If making Peter act like a dog was something he could barely endure, then forcing him to personally bury his own people while they were still alive, that finally pushed him over the edge. As gunshots cracked in the distance, Peter swung and knocked out 2 hunters beside him with the shovel. He showed those monsters no mercy. Seeing the hunters fall lit a fire in the slaves, and they dropped their tools and sprinted out of the work site. They always said black men were born to run, but when bullets start flying, luck matters way more than talent. And Peter got lucky. He dodged the shots and escaped into the deep woods with 3 others. Of course, Fassel wasn't about to let him go. He brought his hounds and men, chasing right behind them. Peter's group tore through the forest, crossed the last stretch of grass, and reached a river. Peter didn't hesitate. He led everyone straight across. But one man froze on the spot because in the middle of the river, a crocodile was staring him down. Peter's group made it across, but that guy hesitated for just a few seconds, and the hounds tackled him to the ground. Every direction around them was swamp. Fassel said, "Peter won't just scatter like a bunch of flies. He'll have one clear place he's trying to reach." Meanwhile, Peter and the other 2 hid deeper in the woods. But staying together meant getting caught was way more likely, so they split up. They followed the distant cannon fire from Lincoln's army, planning to regroup at the camp on the other side. Peter hadn't gone far when he spotted a farmhouse. He quietly went to the well and gulped down a few mouthfuls of water, then stole a shirt. The owner's daughter saw him. If she screamed, "Thief!" you could say she was just protecting her home. But instead she screamed, "Run away!" And that says it all, being a slave. was already stamped deep into people's minds. Even kids looked down on them. A bell started ringing, and it drew Fassel's group in the woods. With the hounds leading the way, they came charging like mad straight at Peter. Peter used the shirt to wrap his wounds, then jumped into the river, using the water to wash away his scent. Fassel watched the calm surface and a crocodile swimming by and assumed Peter had crossed safely, or maybe ended up in the crocodile's jaws, so he turned around and left. Only then did Peter slowly lift his head out of the water, gasping like crazy for fresh air. Peter wasn't just prey to the hunters. He was also food for the crocodiles, the rulers of this river. One of them yanked him underwater. After a brutal struggle, it went. Peter reacted fast, jamming a branch in its jaws, then finished it off with his dagger. He hid inside a hollow tree and treated his wounds. Fresh blood dripped onto the leaves. The next day, Fassel came back with his men. They found the crocodile's body. He figured Peter got eaten. But when they cut it open, the belly was empty. That's when he realized Peter was a real problem. Not only was he smart enough to throw them off, he even took down a crocodile on his own. And that just made Fassel more determined. Because no matter how tough you are, to him you're still just a slave. So the hunt kept going. Peter smeared mud all over to mask his scent. He climbed into a small cabin and saw the coals were still glowing, so he heated his dagger in the embers, then pressed it to the wound, cauterizing it the roughest way possible. After that, he climbed a tree again, used smoke to drive off bees, and grabbed a honeycomb. Honey's actually great for treating wounds. But he couldn't stay there long. He hopped into a boat and slipped out of the danger zone. When Fassel saw the smoke, he knew something was off. He rushed over and found the cabin empty. Just a few drops of blood on the floor proved Peter had been there. He took the hounds around the swamp and found the spot where Peter came ashore. On this side, Peter runs into another enslaved man. The guy blames him for leading the hounds here. Peter pulls out an onion and signals him to rub it on his body so the dogs won't catch his scent. But the guy doesn't believe him. To save time, he just rubs it quickly and takes off. Pretty soon, Fassel's hunters find the man hiding up in a tree. A gunshot rings out. He's hit and falls hard. He looks toward where Peter is hiding until his breathing stops. He never gives up Peter's location. Rain pours down and rats start tearing at the body. That gruesome scene left Peter deeply traumatized as he kept running for his life. But at the same time, Peter's wife and kids aren't having it easy either. When she hears the owner plans to sell her to someone else, a desperate idea hits her. So she can stay with her child, she doesn't hesitate. She shoves her hand into the cotton gin. A blood-curdling scream follows. She sacrifices an arm just to be allowed to remain by her child's side. That night, firelight guides Peter's way. A burning warhorse races past, and Peter follows its path to an estate consumed by the flames of war. It's nothing but ruins now, bodies scattered everywhere. Everything screams that this place is dangerous, but Peter doesn't overthink it. He walks into the dining room, grabs leftover food, and devours it. Suddenly, he hears piano music coming from nearby. He opens the door and steps in, and a black child is there, silently begging for help. Peter lifts the kid into the wagon. The boy can tell Peter won't hurt him, so he hands Peter a little cross necklace, and right then a hunter shows up again. But with a gun pointed right at him, Peter has no choice. He drops the dagger. He keeps begging the hunter to spare the child, but this cold-blooded man doesn't care if the kid lives or dies. To him, the child is just something he can wipe out whenever he feels like it. The boy dies in despair, and Peter snaps in rage. He grips the cross tight in his hand and charges straight at the hunter. In one quick move, he steals the man's weapon, then takes down the other hunter too. Turns out all of this was Fassel's doing. Because he couldn't catch Peter, he burned this estate down to lure Peter out. When Fassel returns to the estate, there's no Peter in sight. Only two of his men lying dead on the ground. He swears he'll catch Peter no matter what, and storms off with the hounds, hunting like a madman. Peter hasn't gone far either. He quietly lies in ambush in the tall grass. The moment the hound appears, he shoots it dead to get rid of the problem. From night till morning, Peter runs all the way to the shore. Distant gunfire points him in the right direction, but it also helps Fassel close in on him. Peter bolts without looking back, not realizing danger is right behind him. A whip swings. Peter is knocked flat to the ground. He collapses onto the sand, completely hopeless. He drops to his knees in silence, just waiting for death to come. Right then, a gunshot explodes. And the one who falls isn't Peter, it's Fassel. He dies right in front of Peter's eyes. The shooter is an officer from Lincoln's army, and he's black too. Peter was one step away from death, and only now can he breathe again. He collapses, kneeling low to the ground, and finally soldiers help him back to camp. After who knows how long, Peter wakes up from his delirium. When he wakes up, he realizes everyone in this camp has the same skin color as him. War has left these black soldiers badly wounded, their bodies marked by pain and hardship. But their faces still look bright, because this is a fight for freedom. Some men were born to be soldiers, but runaways still had to make a choice. Either go back and work on federal farms, or put on a uniform and head to the battlefield. Peter doesn't really have another option. He goes to the supply unit to get his uniform. That's when he meets two white photographers. After hearing about Peter's brutal escape, everything he survived, they asked to photograph him, so the whole world can see the true face of slavery. Peter agrees, takes off his shirt, and sits down. From the front, he looks like a strong, healthy man. But the moment he turns around, his back is a mess of tangled scars. The photographers freeze, stunned into silence for a long second. That's how the photo, "The Scourged Back," was born. It became the most direct evidence of slavery's brutality, and it awakened people, fueling resistance in countless enslaved black people. Many volunteered to join the Union Army, rising up to fight slavery in the South. And now Peter has become a brave soldier. This is his first time going into battle. War shows him the truth. It's even more terrifying than he ever imagined. Just like other black men chasing freedom, he pushes through the bombs and bullets, running into the smoke and flames. They keep charging forward non-stop, which also exposes them to enemy gunfire. Even with bullets ahead, nobody backs down. Even the captain gets killed, right in the middle of the push. Explosions tear the ground apart, and Peter watches his brothers fall one after another. He can't stop, he can only keep moving. With rage in his chest and freedom on his mind, he charges straight at the enemy like a man possessed. When the smoke finally starts to clear, sunlight shines across the battlefield. Blood has turned the ground into a river. Bodies are everywhere, piled like mountains of bones. The enemy flag is dragged down, and this victory belongs to the army of black soldiers fighting for justice. They free the slaves and shoot the brutal slave owner dead. When the word freedom reaches the enslaved people, they cry with joy and hug each other, but they can't even believe it, that this day could actually come. After searching everywhere, Peter finally reunites with his family. They hold each other tight at last. The Emancipation Proclamation helped countless black people gain freedom. And finally, on 1860, America freed a total of 4,000 enslaved people. This film, Peter's freedom journey, shows just how lucky he was. Surviving suffering most people could never endure, not for a single day. Like so many others, he fought to stay alive through an endless night. And that's where today's movie recap ends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.